Imagine a world where shadows hold more power than the light, a world of secret deals, ruthless violence, and unimaginable wealth. For decades, two giants have ruled this underworld, the Mafia and the Cartels. From sharp-suited mobsters to drug lords commanding private armies, these groups have left their mark on history. But today, in 2025, as the criminal landscape shifts, one question burns brighter than ever: who's more powerful, the Mafia or the Cartels? This isn't just a tale of good versus evil. It's a clash of empires, each with its own strengths, weaknesses, and legacies. The Mafia, with its century-old traditions, faces off against the Cartels, whose modern reign is fueled by the global drug trade. In this narration, we'll explore their origins, their operations, and their current standings. By the end, we'll see who truly wears the crown in today's criminal underworld. Let's dive in. First, let's step into the world of the Mafia. Picture a dimly lit room, cigar smoke curling in the air, and men in tailored suits swearing loyalty under a code of silence. This is the Mafia we know from the movies, but its real story is even more compelling. The Mafia's roots stretch back to 19th century Sicily, where small gangs offered protection in a chaotic, lawless land. These weren't just thugs, they were problem solvers, stepping in where governments failed. Fast forward to the early 20th century, and Italian immigrants brought this system to America. It was during Prohibition, in the 1920s and 30s, that the Mafia hit its stride. Bootlegging alcohol turned them into millionaires overnight. Names like Al Capone became legends, running gambling dens, loan-sharking rings, and extortion rackets with an iron fist. What made the Mafia special was its structure. It wasn't a loose gang, it was an organization. Bosses, underbosses, capos, and soldiers formed a hierarchy bound by omerta, the vow never to talk to the law. In cities like New York and Chicago, they didn't just break the law, they became a shadow government. They controlled unions, bribed politicians, and even ran legitimate businesses as fronts. Their golden age lasted through the mid-20th century, but cracks started to show. In the 1980s and 90s, laws like the RICO Act in the US gave police new tools to take them down. Informants flipped, bosses went to prison, and bloody internal wars thinned their ranks. By the 2000s, many thought the Mafia was finished, a relic of a bygone era. But here's the thing, the Mafia doesn't die easily. Today they've adapted. They've traded Tommy guns for laptops, diving into cybercrime, money laundering, and even scams in the renewable energy sector. They're quieter now, less flashy, but still active. In places like Sicily or parts of the US, their influence lingers, woven into the fabric of local life. Now let's shift gears to the Cartels, a force that's younger, louder, and far more brutal. If the Mafia is a chess player, the Cartels are a wrecking ball. The Cartels rose to power in the 1970s and 80s, born in the rugged landscapes of Latin America, places like Colombia and Mexico. It all started with drugs. As demand for cocaine exploded in the US, these groups saw an opportunity. The Medellin cartel, led by Pablo Escobar, turned smuggling into an art form. At their peak, they moved tons of cocaine a day, raking in billions. Escobar himself was worth an estimated $30 billion, enough to make him one of the richest men alive. But wealth isn't what defines the cartels, it's their ruthlessness. They don't hide in the shadows like the Mafia, they wage war. Massacres, beheadings, and bombings are their calling cards. In Mexico, groups like the Sinaloa Cartel and Jalisco New Generation, or CJN, have turned entire regions into battlegrounds. They fight each other, they fight the government, and they don't care who gets caught in the crossfire. Drugs are their lifeblood. Cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and now fentanyl. The US is the world's biggest drug market, and the cartels are its top suppliers. This gives them cash, billions of dollars a year. The Sinaloa cartel alone pulls in an estimated $3 billion annually. That's more than the GDP of some small countries. With that money, they buy weapons, bribe officials, and build networks that stretch across the globe. Europe, Asia, Africa, you name it. But they don't stop at drugs. Human trafficking, extortion, even stealing oil from pipelines, they've got their hands in everything, and they're not subtle about it. Cartels use social media to flex their power, posting videos of their wealth, their guns, even their executions. It's a message, cross us and you're done. So, who's more powerful today? To figure that out, let's break it down into three arenas: influence, wealth, and reach. Influence. The Mafia's power is subtle but deep. In places like Sicily or old-school American cities, they're part of the community. They run protection rackets, sure, but they also fix problems, paving roads or settling disputes when the law won't. It's a twisted kind of loyalty that keeps them relevant. The cartels? Their influence is raw and sprawling. In parts of Mexico or Colombia, they're the real authority. They build schools, hand out cash, and control towns, but it's not love that keeps people in line, it's fear. They don't blend in, they dominate. Wealth. Here the cartels win hands down. The drug trade is a gold mine. Hundreds of billions of dollars flow through it every year, and the cartels own a huge chunk. The Mafia makes money too, but their mix of legal fronts and smaller-scale crimes can't touch the cartels' drug-fueled fortunes. The cartels are global players. Their supply chains snake across continents, feeding markets from London to Tokyo. The Mafia has international ties. Italy's Ndrangheta, for example, is a major cocaine player, but they're still more rooted in specific strongholds, not sprawling empires. But power isn't just numbers, it's staying power. The Mafia's been around for over 100 years. They've survived wars, depressions, and crackdowns. When the heat's on, they pivot, going from bootlegging to cybercrime without missing a beat. They're like cockroaches, tough, quiet, and nearly impossible to stamp out. The cartels are different. They burn bright and fast. Their violence keeps them on top, but it also paints a target on their backs. Governments hunt them, rivals attack them, and every captured kingpin, like Sinaloa's El Chapo, threatens to topple their house of cards. They're a wildfire, devastating, but maybe not built to last. So, who's more powerful today? If we're talking sheer force, money, violence, and global control, the cartels take the crown. They're the titans of the modern underworld, fueled by the endless appetite for drugs. Their cash and chaos give them an edge that's hard to ignore. But don't write off the Mafia. Their power is quieter, more enduring. They've weathered storms that would have crushed lesser groups. They may not dominate headlines, but they're still there, pulling strings in the background. In the end, it's not a clean win. The cartels rule today's criminal world with an iron grip, but the Mafia's resilience keeps them in the game. Both are forces to be reckoned with, shaping the shadows in their own way. So, who's more powerful? Maybe the real answer is, it depends on how you measure power, and how long you think they'll last.